Good morning. Thanks very much for that introduction, Janice. Good morning, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here this morning, albeit virtually. And before I say anything else, I want to pay tribute to the levels of experience present today, and that includes the lived experience of those of you who've been victims of crime and those who have come through the criminal justice system here in Northern Ireland. For those of you who don't know me, as Janice said, I head up the Department of Justice's Access to Justice Directorate, which provides policy around victims and witnesses. It's responsible for trying to speed up the justice process. Domestic and sexual abuse also comes within our remit, and delivery of system-wide reform programs like the Gillen Review, as well as the department's legislative program. So the Access to Justice team in the department have a wide and challenging brief, but one which I believe has the potential and the clear aim of trying to deliver meaningful and tangible improvements across the justice system for victims of crime. What struck me since I joined the Department of Justice in the autumn, and it's been reinforced by Janice's opening comments, is how pivotal victims are to the whole criminal justice system, both to the effective delivery of justice, in that cases may literally stand or fall depending upon your willingness to engage with the system and to give evidence, and also that almost every decision or action we take across the whole criminal justice system is likely to impact either positively or negatively on victims. In a sense, victims are in the unique position of being both part of the justice system and they are served by it. So improving how we support victims and ensuring that they're recognised and represented within the justice system has to be one of the department's priorities. However, stating that something is a priority is meaningless without acknowledging that as things stand, and again, reinforced by Janice's opening remarks, as we stand across the breadth of the justice system, we most certainly do not always get it right. And victims' rights are not always afforded the weight that they should be. We know that for many victims of crime, their experience of the criminal justice system can be disorientating and traumatic. We know that we need to work collectively to improve our delivery of charter entitlements. And put simply, we know we need to improve the experience of the system overall for victims. So that's one of the reasons why today's conference is so important. There is so much to learn, both from the lived experience here in Northern Ireland and from the experiences and best practice in other jurisdictions, so that we can better serve victims and more consistently deliver the service they are entitled to. Saying it's easy. No one should underestimate the challenge. As we work to make victims more central to our justice system, we also have to do that very complex thing of balancing the rights of a defendant and the need for a fair trial with the administration of justice. I look forward to the debate, which is going to be ongoing. This is not a debate which will ever be finished. There'll never be a line drawn under this. This is something that will be a continual evolution, but I look forward to the debate about how we can best achieve this balance going forward to the future. Now, victims clearly have their individual voices, but they also need a collective voice. A key focus for today is how we try to improve the participative rights for victims. For me, a major step forward has been the appointment of the Commissioner Designate for Victims of Crime, and I'm really pleased that that Commissioner, Geraldine Hanna, will be speaking later today on the programme. The former Justice Minister established the role of Commissioner Designate in March last year, and it marked a major step towards empowering victims and recognising their needs and the pivotal role they play in the criminal justice system. The Commissioner is tasked with providing a voice for victims of crime, amplifying their voice, unifying that voice, representing that voice, promoting their rights under a victim's charter, challenging government, both politicians and officials like myself, and criminal justice organisations where we need to improve, and holding us accountable for the delivery of those improvements. I am also particularly looking forward to hearing later from one of the SOLAs, from the Sexual Offences Legal Advisors Scheme. The SOLA scheme flows from the Gillen Review and was established by the DOJ in partnership with Victim Support in April 2021. By providing publicly funded legal advice to complainants in serious sexual offence cases, the SOLAR scheme is empowering victims of crime to know their legal rights and to engage with the criminal justice system on issues around privacy rights in respect of disclosure of third-party information and previous sexual history. Since launching, it's supported over 1,000 people. So John Gillen did describe this as being a game changer in terms of the support offered to victims of this particular type of crime, and I think he was absolutely right. But I recognise too that we do have a victims charter in place, and that it sets out the services and standards that victims of crime are entitled to. And I have to acknowledge our shortcomings as a system in consistently delivering these. Part of that's about improving the visibility of the Charter publicly, as well as cross criminal justice organisations, to raise awareness of the rights and entitlements of victims, as well as our own obligations. And we have a programme of outreach in place to do this. Within criminal justice organisations, there's a key role for leaders in championing the rights and interests of victims. And there is also a role for the Commissioner here in identifying and promoting best practice, but also calling out where we are non-compliant. A charter should not just be an aspirational statement, but rather it should be a commitment, and a commitment against which our actions should be measured. I want to talk briefly about trauma, which Janice also mentioned. In recent decades, we've increasingly come to understand the impact of trauma on people's lives, how it can compromise every aspect of people's physical, emotional, social, even economic well-being. I've never subscribed to the saying that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, and I don't know anyone who works with people who've experienced trauma who does. Crime is one of the major sources of trauma in our society, and it probably always will be. But unfortunately, the experience of being a victim of crime and trying to navigate the criminal justice system can be a source of additional trauma. And we have to and can do something about that. Steps that we're currently taking include providing better access to information, to explain the system and what people can expect within it. It's also about delivering new initiatives like access to remote evidence centres, where vulnerable victims can give evidence under special measures, away from the court building, and without any risk of encountering the defendant. We know these experiences can be traumatizing, re-traumatizing even, and so this is a really important step. We're also working to scope arrangements that will allow us to trial new measures, such as pre-recorded cross-examination. Our ability to progress some of these, of course, will be dependent on future funding, which is, of course, a reason why we need a local minister in place to fight for the resources, but also to provide political leadership in the difficult choices that are part of any prioritization exercise. I think people expect that to be the work of someone who is an elected representative of the people, and I look forward to the time, hopefully in the not too distant future, when we can welcome a new minister to take the lead with regard to that. Now, hand in hand with trying to reduce trauma is the need to provide support to victims. And we are committed to trying to ensure that victims of crime are able to access support services. Some of this is through the witness and community support services provided by Victim Support and the NSPCC's Young Witness Service, which we fund. Similarly, funding provided by the police and the department means that hate crime advocates through Victim Support ensure that victims of hate crime are aware of their rights and supported when they report to the police and progress through the justice system. We have also put in place specific advocacy services to support victims of domestic and sexual abuse, which is being delivered through the Assist NI, and again is jointly funded by the department and the police. These services are intended to help victims to have more confidence in the criminal justice system, to reduce trauma and confusion, and to ensure that people's voices are heard and listened to. However, I acknowledge that the breadth of victims' needs and victim recovery journey does not always end with the criminal justice system. And that's why our victim and witness strategy is so important in helping us to improve our understanding and response to the longer term needs of victims. That's a very quick touch on some of the areas that we're currently working on to improve the experience of victims of crime. It's not intended to be comprehensive, and there's lots of other things that I could have mentioned which I haven't, but particularly I haven't discussed the issue of delay, which we know is a real challenge for victims who, having had the trauma of being a victim of crime, having shown the courage to come forward and report that crime, then are faced with an inexplicable length of time before resolution can be reached in relation to the crime that was committed. It's unacceptable, and I know it's one of the biggest factors affecting victims and witnesses, and it's something that must be addressed. And I can say that the Criminal Justice Board has identified this as being its #1 priority, and in the coming year I hope to be able to report progress against a range of initiatives which are intended to speed up access to justice, which I think will be one of the most welcome movements for victims of crime. I acknowledge this is a journey ahead of us, and I want to emphasize that we're serious and committed to delivering improvements, but there will be challenges. I've mentioned the absence of a minister, which is obviously a very significant challenge, but even with a minister, we know that we are facing very difficult times in terms of public finances, and there are going to be constraints. And even when we are moving forward in the right direction, there are going to be times when the scale and pace of delivery are going to be affected by those financial constraints. But we must plan for future delivery. We have to continue to engage and be informed by the experience of our stakeholders, and that certainly has to have at the head of the list victims of crime. And in terms of protecting and supporting those at risk, while resources will be a constraint, the vision must be clear and we must move in the right direction. I hope I've given you a flavour of how important this work is to the Department of Justice. It will inevitably evolve and change over time, which is why continual dialogue with victims is necessary as we go through that evolution journey. And I certainly am committed to making sure that dialogue is given an absolute priority while I'm in this role. I'd like to thank Victim Support for this event and particularly for giving me a relative novice to this world the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm certainly looking forward to the rest of the day, and I hope everyone else has an enjoyable and a profitable morning. So now I'm going to hand back to you, Janice. Thank you.